Judge Cotto, as I read this, what you're saying, and if you will permit me to use a more common vernacular, you're saying that to be sufficiently woke, an Asian American must support policies that discriminate against Asian Americans. I got to tell you, that doesn't make sense. Is my reading of what you wrote incorrect?
Senator Cruz, again, we are talking about something that I wrote when I think I was a 23-year-old
But do you agree with it today? I'm not asking what you thought then. I'm saying today, as you sit here, as the Senate is considering you for a lifetime appointment as a judge, do you agree with what you wrote that Asian Americans, to be sufficiently liberated, must support discrimination against Asian Americans?
All right, so you just watched that clip, and I need you to stay right here because what you are about to see in the full video is one of the most revealing confirmation hearing exchanges I have seen in a long time. Ted Cruz just exposed something every American needs to understand. A judicial nominee sitting before the Senate, being considered for a lifetime appointment on the federal bench, who cannot tell you whether racial discrimination is wrong. Not won't. Cannot. Or at least won't pretend to. And the reason Carter keeps hiding behind judicial canons and complete context is because the moment Carter answers honestly, the whole carefully constructed facade falls apart. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and watch this full video with me because we are going to break down every second of this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to each of the nominees. Judge Cotto, I want to start with you. Is racial discrimination wrong?
Senator, our Constitution prohibits race discrimination on the basis of race.
Okay, let me ask again, is racial discrimination wrong?
Senator, as a judge, I don't deal with issues of morality or whether something...
So you have no views on whether it's right or wrong?
Senator, because that is an issue that is frequently litigated before the courts, pursuant to Canon 3 of the Code of Conduct.
Okay, so why does the Constitution prohibit racial discrimination?
Senator, I think it's part of our Constitution and this nation's history of aiming for equal justice and treating people, regardless of any protected class status, equally and fairly.
So discriminating based on race violates, I think you just said, our Constitution's history of aiming for justice. Is that a fair characterization?
Senator, our case law, if you're talking about race discrimination under the law, yes, pursuant to Supreme Court precedent, race discrimination under the law is prohibited.
So you and I are both graduates of the Harvard Law School. We were there at the same time. I don't think we crossed paths.
We did not.
As you know, our alma mater is currently before the Supreme Court for its longstanding practice of discriminating against Asian Americans. And many top universities across the country have vicious discrimination policies against Asian Americans. They are reminiscent of the quotas against Jews that we saw these same schools impose in the 1950s. These schools believe that Asian Americans have been too successful academically, and that if they allow students to compete based on merit, they'd have too many Asian Americans. And accordingly, Harvard and Yale and a number of other top schools in this country explicitly and brazenly discriminate against Asian Americans. Does that practice concern you?
Senator Cruz, as you know, the Supreme Court recently granted cert in the case to which I think you're referring.
Yes.
And therefore, pursuant, again, to Canon 3, I am
Okay, so you're going to decline to comment, so let's not talk about that case, but let's talk about what you've written. You know, I have to say I was astonished. Senator Grassley asked you about this article you wrote in law school, and your response was, well, gosh, I haven't read that. In my experience, when people are nominated to be a judge, they do some preparation. Did you not reread it in preparation, or did the Biden team tell you don't read it because you don't want to answer questions about it?
Senator, I read it, but again, the question that Senator Grassley...
Okay, good. So you read it, so let's talk about it. I've read it sitting here, and I find it stunning Look, there is a pattern of this administration nominating political activists and radicals to the bench, and they've done it for a year. And it's highly concerning. So I'm looking at what you wrote, your words. You described, quote, the Reagan presidency represented the pinnacle of the counteroffensive launched by the guardians of the status quo. In the face of institutional resistance, activist movements redirected their focus from liberation to survival. Do you believe there was a threat to the survival of Asian American groups under President Reagan?
Senator Cruz, again, that was a law review, book review.
I'm just asking if you agree with the sentiment. You wrote it.
Senator, I don't recall.
Do you agree with it now?
What we were thinking.
Do you agree with the sentiment now? Not what you were thinking then. I'm not asking your state of mind then. I'm saying, do you agree with the words you wrote?
Senator, again, I don't know what our purpose.
I don't want your purpose then. Today, as you listen to the words you wrote, do you agree with them or do you think I was wrong?
Senator, without the complete context.
Okay, let's read a little bit more then. You talk about the neoconservative view, and here's what you define an Asian neoconservative: as someone with an opposition to racism, so that's good, but a commitment to ending affirmative action programs. And you write, quote, the neoconservatives' narrow vision of success currently threatens to impose divisions within the Asian American community and among different ethnic groups. Emphasizing personal achievement and success as measured by the status quo, the Asian American neoconservative fails to acknowledge the shared history of oppression and then ties their individual success to the survival and liberation of all oppressed peoples. Judge Cotto, as I read this, what you're saying, and if you will permit me to use a more common vernacular, you're saying that to be sufficiently woke, an Asian American must support policies that discriminate against Asian Americans. I got to tell you, that doesn't make sense. Is my reading of what you wrote incorrect?
Senator Cruz, again, we are talking about something that I wrote when I think I was a 23-year-old
But do you agree
law
with it
student.
today? I'm not asking what you thought then. I'm saying today, as you sit here, as the Senate is considering you for a lifetime appointment as a judge, do you agree with what you wrote that Asian Americans, to be sufficiently liberated, must support discrimination against Asian Americans?
Senator, without the complete context of that particular quote that you've excised,
I read it to you.
I cannot give you whether my opinion today, whether or not I agree with what I said as a 23-year-old law student. I would have to review the entirety.
But you said you did review it before this hearing, right?
Senator,
Correct?
I reviewed it briefly. This was quite some time ago, over 25 years.
It's a very short article. It's about 6 pages.
I co-wrote it with a classmate of mine.
Okay, so now that we have watched the whole thing, let me tell you what stood out most and why this exchange matters far beyond one hearing room. Cruz starts deceptively simple. Is racial discrimination wrong? That is not a trick question. That is not a legally complex question. Every first-year law student, every reasonable person, every human being with a functioning moral compass can answer that. But Carter won't. Carter hides behind Canon 3 of the Judicial Code of Conduct like it is a force field. The problem is Canon 3 exists to prevent judges from prejudging specific cases. It does not prevent a nominee from having a basic moral position on one of the foundational wrongs in American history. Cruz knows this. And Carter knows Cruz knows this. Then Cruz pivots to Harvard. Both of them went to Harvard Law. Cruz points out that Harvard is actively discriminating against Asian Americans in admissions, comparing it directly to the Jewish quota system's elite schools used in the 1950s. That comparison lands hard because it is historically accurate and morally consistent. If discrimination against Jews by quota was wrong then, discrimination against Asian Americans by soft quota is wrong now. The principle does not change because the target group changes. Then we get to the article. This is where it gets genuinely stunning. Carter co-wrote a law review piece describing the Reagan presidency as a counteroffensive by the guardians of the status quo. Cruz reads from it. Carter says Cruz is taking it out of context. So Cruz reads more. And the more Cruz reads, the worse it gets. The article essentially argues that Asian Americans who oppose affirmative action are failing their community. That to be truly liberated, Asian Americans must support their own disadvantage. Cruz puts it plainly, and I think the characterization is fair. That is a woke litmus test demanding Asian Americans endorse discrimination against Asian Americans. What Carter does throughout all of this is the most telling part. Carter does not say Cruz is wrong. Carter does not defend the article on the merits. Carter keeps saying the quote is incomplete, that it has been 25 years, that Carter reviewed it only briefly. A 6-page article. That Carter co-wrote. That Carter is being asked about for a lifetime federal judgeship. That is not humility. That is a strategy. And Cruz sees it for exactly what it is. This matters beyond this one nominee, because it fits a pattern Cruz names directly. This administration has consistently sent judicial nominees to the Senate who hold views far outside the mainstream, but are coached to reveal as little as possible under questioning. Carter is not an outlier. Carter is the template. And Ted Cruz is one of the few people in that room with both the legal background and the willingness to actually do the work of vetting these nominees the way the confirmation process was designed to work. That is what you watched today.